Is it fair to say this is a single-issue election, that this is the Trump election?
No doubt about it. I think that had Trump not entered our domestic politics and said we should become the 51st state, we'd be having a very different election. We'd be having a change election. The Liberal Party had been in power for 9 years. I'm a liberal. I love my party, but I think it was time for a change. But Trump's interventions have simply shifted the balance entirely. My party was 20 points back in January, and now it's 4 points up, and it's all down to Trump.
In terms of the outcome, therefore, how different will the response to Trump be, depending on who wins?
Interesting. It's an interesting question because, in fact, there's been a great deal of convergence. In that clip you just heard, Poilievre is suddenly changing his tune. He realizes he sounded much too American in style. He's become much more tough on Trump. In policy terms, both sides of the aisle are converging on a strategy to diversify export, seek new markets, eliminate internal trade barriers, build some infrastructure to tie the country together. All of this stuff is addressing a long-standing productivity challenge that Canada's had. Our productivity is falling behind the states, and we've got to catch up if we want to survive economically. So Trump has been a kind of forcing agent to force the country to come together on an agenda of change. And so whoever wins, there's going to be a lot of action on the economic front. But it does look like Mr. Carney will get the nod in the election tonight.
Michael, good morning. Lizzie here. I wonder, is productivity actually a bigger threat than Trump himself? And when you've got such a fiscal squeeze, and as you say, the two candidates converging, is there really much that either can do to solve that productivity problem?
I think there's plenty they can do. Viewers will be astonished to know that Canada has very substantial internal trade barriers between one province and another. That's got to go. We've got lagging productivity in a whole set of sectors connected with our strengths and resources. The question you're asking is what government can do. Can government do this? There is a risk that government will try and do too much and fail. But there's no question that productivity is the chief challenge. And even if Trump hadn't been on the scene, it would have been our challenge. Trump's presence makes it the salient question for our economic survival as a country.
Well, Poilievre is obviously casting himself as the change candidate here, asking the question, why would electing another Liberal fix the productivity problem, especially one who's never held political office before? What's the answer?
Well, Carney's answer is obviously he was in the chair during the Brexit crisis. He showed a very clear and steady hand. He was in the chair during the 2008-2009 meltdown. So he's crisis hardened, crisis experienced, and that's essentially the claim he's making, that if the bad stuff happens, he's the guy you want in the chair. And a lot of Canadians seem to agree with him.
Michael, can Canada become more European? Can it look to Europe maybe as a way of resolving some of the challenges it faces with the United States?
I think Canada has always been more European. We have a much more generous welfare state, a much more European-style welfare state than the United States to begin with. We have a lot of historical ties to Europe. But the Atlantic Ocean is a big thing, and 85% of our trade goes down to the States. So I think we will have much closer ties to Europe, possibly developing export of our natural gas and oil to Europe. We don't have any capacity to do that at the moment, but that might develop over the next 10, 15 years. That would be a strong connection between our two continents. But the fact, geography is a stubborn thing. We're next door to the United States, and I think we can reduce our dependence on the United States, but it's going to be a fact of life.
Is there an element of just waiting? time is also a fairly big factor as well in all of this. Do you think Canada just waits this one out, waits Trump out, or does it have to act in the near term? It has to take a stance at the moment. I'm just wondering how you would be thinking about not just the next few months, but the next few years, and how the relationship is going to change, and whether it's permanently changed between these two countries.
Well, I think, first of all, that we've had some economic challenges, the productivity question, that are problems even if Trump wasn't here, and Trump's made them worse. So we got to fix some stuff at home anyway. And so that has to change. I don't think waiting him out is the right strategy. We've got J.D. Vance just behind, and I think America is changing permanently. I don't think this is just the act of, let me be blunt, a madman. I think this reflects deep discontent in the American heartland at the cost of empire that ordinary Americans have had to pay, with an overvalued dollar, imports flooding in, destruction of the industrial base. These are actual facts. Whatever you think about Mr. Trump, he's picking up something in the heartland, and that leads me to think that there's some permanent changes. Any administration that came in after Mr. Trump, whether it's Mr. Vance or the Democrats, will be taking a much more protectionist, mercantilist approach to economic policy, and that forces Canada to change its tune and diversify its markets.
Michael, over the weekend, President Trump told Time that he's really not trolling with these threats to make Canada the 51st state. But, Mark Carney says he doesn't think Trump would use force to do that. Do you?
I take him seriously. I think it would be insanity to send troops. I take him seriously. Do I take him literally? I can't see any American president sending tanks across across the border. I just can't see it. But I can see something else. I can see him engaging in economic warfare over the length of his term as president that would make it so difficult for Canadians to survive that they would begin to migrate south. And then if he blocked the border and prevented migration south, then you might have within Canada a desperate move of people saying, let's amalgamate with the United States because we have no chance to survive as an independent country. I regard that with horror, and I would oppose it. But there are all kinds of ways you can use economic power if he was ruthless enough and determined enough that could bring a much smaller economy, we're a tenth the size of the United States, to its knees. And so you have to take this seriously. He's the president of the United States, after all.